Hi, and welcome back to Heimler's History. First, let's take your temperature. The Me Too movement is overblown. Donald Trump is an unconstitutional tyrant. Abortion is murder. Political correctness is for children who can't stand to get their feelings hurt. People don't kill people. Guns kill people. Gender is a social construct. Alright, have I juiced up everyone's outrage machine yet?
Not me.
Oh look, it's YouTube sensation Mr. Beast.
I will cut you!
And there it is. Now to be clear, I'm not necessarily outlining my own beliefs in all that I just said. I was trying to be an equal opportunity offender to all. And the point is this, what did those statements make you want to do? Well, if you're like a lot of people, it probably made you want to outrage all over me. And this video is an attempt to persuade you that that is not necessarily a good or right reaction. Stick with me, I'll try to explain what I mean. Okay, first things first, this video is a collaboration with the venerable Mr. Beat. Not to be confused with Mr. Beast, that's another guy. Mr. Beat made an excellent video on how people's minds tend to close as they get older. And once you're done watching this video, you should go watch that one. But my video is more about a narrow species of closed-mindedness, namely outrage. So I'm gonna break this video down into three parts. First, we're gonna talk about the problem. Second, we're gonna talk about where the problem came from. And third, my humble attempt at a solution. All right, so here's the problem with outrage. So hopefully I don't have to waste my powers of persuasion convincing anybody that over the last 10 to 15 years, outrage has been the default reaction to anything that offends us. So what is outrage? Well, etymologically, it comes from the old Latin word ultraticum, which means something like passing beyond the bounds of something. So linguistically, outrage is a response to something that goes far beyond the reasonable bounds of what was said. So here's the problem as I see it. Outrage has become our go-to response for anything that offends us, no matter how outrageous that event actually is. Now, here's where I tell you that it is obviously true that there are some things that are truly worthy of outrage. But when we outrage about things that are not truly outrageous, we lose the emotional capacity and range to outrage about the things that are truly outrageous. Let me try to explain. Back in 2014, Slate.com kept track of everything that people were outraged by every single day of the year, and their conclusion was fascinating. They said, when something outrageous happens, when a posh London block installs anti-homeless spikes, or when Khloe Kardashian wears a Native American headdress, or for that matter, when we read the horrifying details in the Sentence Torture Report, it's easy to anticipate the cycle that follows. Anger, sarcasm, recrimination, piling on, defenses and counterattacks, anger at the anger, disdain for the outrage, sometimes an apology, and on to the next. Twitter and Facebook make it easier than ever to participate from home, and the same cycle occurs regardless of the gravity of the offense, which can make each outrage feel forgettable, replaceable. The bottomlessness of our rage has a numbing effect. You see, if you highlight everything on a page, you actually end up highlighting nothing. In the same way, if we outrage about everything, we actually end up outraging about nothing. If we outrage about everything, we're like the boy who cries wolf over and over and over again. When the wolf actually shows up, he has no words left to convince everyone that the threat this time is real, and so everyone gets eaten. And I think that's the real problem with our tendency towards outrage. It's not that there aren't things that are truly outrageous, but when we've used up all of our outrage words on that which is not truly outrageous, then we have no words left to describe a true outrage. And I think that's what they mean in the Slate article when they say that our constant outrage has a numbing effect. Okay, so if that's the problem, now let's look at where it came from. And I happen to believe it has a lot to do with our transition into a screen-saturated culture. And I lean heavily on the work of Neil Postman and Marshall McLuhan here. So back before screens were everywhere, our public discourse was primarily shaped by the printed page. And so the question is, what kind of public discourse does the printed page produce? And the answer is that it creates discourse that is fundamentally reasonable. And I mean discourse that uses the reasoning capacities of a human being. And here's why. The medium of the printed word makes a person think about what is being said on the page. The way the printed word presents itself is in propositions and outcomes, premises and conclusion. And so if a person is going to interact with the printed word, they have to develop a capacity for understanding those things and reasoning them out. And so with that capacity developed, they go out into the wider world and they start discussing ideas with people, and when they do, they're fundamentally reasonable discussions. So my argument is that a print culture creates reasonable discourse. That's not to say that it's always civil, but it is usually reasonable. Now today we've transitioned primarily into a screen-based culture. But the thing is, the screen as a medium demands a different kind of response out of its user, namely an emotional one. Now hopefully I don't have to convince you of the ubiquity of video-based learning today. If you've been in a school for more than 5 minutes, you've probably had a video played in your classroom. And hopefully it goes without saying that I'm generally for that. I mean, but we have to be honest with the kind of learning that is occurring through this medium. If McLuhan and Postman are correct, then the primary thing that's being communicated to you through this lens right now is not reason, but emotion. And someone may object at this point saying, aren't you trying to reason with us right now through the screen? Aren't you making arguments and trying to convince us of something? And the answer is, of course I am. But while I am doing it, I'm obeying the demands of this particular medium, which says that if I don't entertain you and leave you feeling something, namely good, then you won't watch. I mean, that's why I'm talking fast. That's why there's a musical intro. That's why I cut the video so that first I'm here. Now I'm here. Now I'm here. Now I'm here. None of this would be necessary if I was trying to argue this on a printed page. But this medium demands that I entertain you and leave you with a feeling. I mean, haven't we all watched videos in which the presenter was extremely boring and went on and on and on? They talked slow, there was no cuts, there was no movement in it.
Yes.
Exactly. So all I'm trying to say is that since we've transitioned from primarily a print culture to primarily a screen culture, that our capacity for reasoning has shrunk and our capacity for emotion has become outsized. In fact, I would say that our emotions have become so distended that any poke produces a pain and discomfort all out of proportion to the poke itself. All things being equal, when you throw a pebble into a pond, it should produce ripples in proportion to the size of the pebble. And today, if anyone throws a pebble into a pond, it creates a tidal wave all out of proportion to its size. Okay, so I've told you what the problem is, I told you where I think it comes from, now let me try to offer a solution. The first step in this solution is to recognize it, and I hope I've done some work to help you do that here. The second step is to embrace humility. Every generation has its blind spots. The problem is nobody in that generation can see its own blind spots, and that's why it's a blind spot. So I think it could go a long way in tempering our outrageous outrage to have the posture of heart that says, maybe I'm wrong about this. Now, maybe not, but maybe. And I think this is where the study of history can help us. When we study the slaveholding South, for example, it's easy for us to condemn them and outrage all over their treatment of the black population. But here's the thing, if you're white and you had grown up in that environment all of your life, you probably would have believed the exact same thing as they did. And if you don't realize that, then you're just wasting your outrage. It means nothing. Now, just to be clear, chattel slavery is a worthy target of a person's outrage. It was absolutely a great evil. But the point is this, and if you haven't heard anything else that I've said, just listen to this. Is it possible that we believe something just as grievous as that, but we just can't see it? I mean, it would be foolish to believe that our great-great-grandchildren aren't going to be deeply ashamed at least something that we all believe. So I would say humility goes a long way in tempering the outrage culture. The second thing to realize is that the outrage machine is exceptionally fickle. If I find myself participating in the outrage culture, then I may find that one day when I take a misstep, it turns its unmerciful teeth upon me. And the third thing to realize is that outrage is usually not that effective in bringing people back into line through public shaming. Haven't you noticed that if a person transgresses a social norm and the outrage machine springs into life, that it almost never elicits true repentance or a changed mind? Outrage can actually harden the people in the very beliefs that caused the outrage in the first place. And the reason why is because outrage is not an argument. It is an instrument of public shame, and nobody willingly submits to public shame. So I'm sure this is an ongoing conversation. I'd be very interested to hear your reasonable thoughts down in the comments below. If you came over here from Mr. Beat's channel, then welcome. Glad to have you around. If you want to join this little community of folks, then subscribe. And if there's some small chance that you're watching this and you're not subscribed to Mr. Beat, then go over there and do it. It's well worth the click. All right, see you on the flip-flop.